Think your meal prep is impressive? Vikings were surviving months-long ocean voyages and brutal Scandinavian winters over 1,000 years ago, without refrigerators, grocery stores, or even basic preservation technology we take for granted. While we're obsessing over expensive superfoods and complicated recipes, we've completely forgotten the ingenious food systems that kept Norse explorers alive during their conquest of the North Atlantic. Today, you're going to discover 16 cheap Viking meals that sustained warriors, farmers, and families through some of history's harshest conditions. Techniques so effective that modern nutritionists are rediscovering why these simple foods provided superior nutrition compared to many processed options today. From fermented dairy that rivals any probiotic supplement, to preservation methods that kept food edible for years, these meals solved problems we're still struggling with. Get ready to discover why Vikings weren't just fierce warriors. They were survival geniuses whose forgotten food wisdom could revolutionize how you think about eating when times get tough. Smoked mutton, hangikjot, the meat that lasted all winter. Vacuum-sealed packages and freezers are modern luxuries Vikings never had, yet they created hangikjot, smoked mutton that could hang in storage for months without spoiling, providing precious protein through the darkest winter days when fresh meat was impossible to come by. What made hangikjot special was the smoking process itself. Vikings hung leg or shoulder cuts of sheep in smokehouses filled with smoke, from birchwood, juniper, or dried sheep dung. This wasn't quick smoking like modern barbecue. The meat hung for weeks, slowly absorbing smoke, while the combination of heat, smoke compounds, and dehydration created an environment where bacteria couldn't survive. The result was meat that could last 6 months or longer without refrigeration. Modern food science confirms the genius of this technique. The phenolic compounds in wood smoke act as natural antimicrobials and antioxidants, while the gradual moisture loss concentrates proteins and creates an inhospitable environment for spoilage organisms. Research published in the Journal of Food Science shows that traditional smoke curing can reduce bacterial counts by over 99%. While preserving essential amino acids. For today's homesteaders and preppers, hangikjot offers a proven method for preserving meat without electricity. You can recreate this using a simple smokehouse or even a covered grill with indirect heat and wood chips. Modern Icelandic families still make hangikjot using methods virtually unchanged from Viking times. But while smoked mutton provided crucial winter protein, Vikings needed something they could eat every single day. A staple that required no cooking and delivered nutrition that kept them working through 18-hour summer days and surviving dark winter months. Skyr, the original Icelandic protein powerhouse. Greek yogurt became a health food trend only recently, but Vikings had Skyr over 1,000 years ago, a cultured dairy product so nutritionally dense that a single bowl could fuel a day of hard labor in the fields or at sea. What made Skyr extraordinary was its protein concentration. Unlike regular milk or even modern yogurt, Skyr required up to 4 times as much milk to produce the same volume of final product. The whey was drained away, leaving behind a thick, creamy substance that contained approximately 20 grams of protein per cup, more than 3 eggs. For Viking families with limited food resources, this protein density meant Skyr could sustain workers through physically demanding days. The fermentation process behind Skyr reveals sophisticated food science that Vikings understood intuitively. They heated milk to about 194 degrees Fahrenheit, 90 degrees Celsius, then cooled it to around 98 degrees Fahrenheit, 37 degrees Celsius, before adding a small amount of previous Skyr batch as a starter culture. The beneficial bacteria fermented the milk sugars into lactic acid, which both preserved the dairy and made it easier to digest. For today's families looking to reduce grocery costs while improving nutrition, Skyr offers remarkable value. You can make it at home using high-quality milk, a small amount of cultured buttermilk, or previous Skyr batch as starter, gentle heating, and 12 to 24 hours of fermentation time. Unlike expensive protein supplements, homemade Skyr costs just pennies per serving. While Skyr provided daily protein, Vikings also needed carbohydrates that could be made quickly, without the luxury of ovens or even proper kitchens, especially when working far from home or traveling. Flatbread, flatbroad, the bread that needed no oven. Rising yeast and brick ovens were luxuries most Vikings never had access to, which is why they perfected flatbroad, simple unleavened bread that could be cooked on hot stones over an open fire, providing essential carbohydrates without the time or equipment that conventional bread required. What made flatbread special was its brutal simplicity and speed. Mix barley or oat flour with water, and perhaps a pinch of salt. Knead briefly into a dough, flatten into thin rounds, and cook directly on heated stones or iron griddles for just minutes per side. No rising time, no oven, no complicated techniques. Just immediate food that could be made anywhere. A fire could be built. The nutritional profile of Viking flatbread differed significantly from modern wheat bread. Barley and oats, the grains that actually grew in Scandinavia's short growing season, contain more fiber and protein than refined wheat flour. Modern analysis shows that whole grain barley contains about 12% protein, along with significant amounts of selenium, manganese, and B vitamins. For today's budget-conscious cooks, flatbread represents the ultimate economical staple. A pound of barley or oat flour costs just a few dollars and makes dozens of flatbreads. The cooking method requires no electricity, just a cast iron skillet or griddle over any heat source. But bread alone, even nutritious flatbread, couldn't provide everything Vikings needed. They required protein sources that could survive without any preservation at all, foods that the harsh Scandinavian climate itself kept fresh. Dried fish, hardfisker, nature's protein bars. Energy bars and protein supplements are modern inventions, but Vikings had something better. Hardfisker, air-dried fish that required no salt, no smoking, and no cooking, yet could last for years while providing concentrated protein that sustained explorers across the Atlantic. What made hardfisker extraordinary was how the Arctic climate did all the work. In the cold, dry air of Iceland, Norway, and Greenland, Vikings simply hung cleaned fish, usually cod or haddock, on wooden racks outdoors. The combination of freezing temperatures, low humidity, and constant wind slowly dehydrated the fish over several months without allowing bacterial growth. The result was rock-hard fish that weighed a fraction of its original weight, but retained nearly all its protein. Modern nutritional testing of traditionally dried hardfisker shows it contains approximately 80% protein by weight, higher than almost any other natural food. Research by the University of Iceland confirms that this drying process preserves omega-3 fatty acids and essential amino acids, creating what's essentially a shelf-stable superfood that requires zero energy input to produce. For today's outdoor enthusiasts and emergency preparedness advocates, hardfisker offers lessons in ultimate food efficiency. A single pound of fresh fish yields about 4 ounces, 113 grams of dried fish. Incredibly lightweight and compact for backpacking or emergency food storage. While dried fish provided portable protein, Vikings also mastered using every part of slaughtered animals, wasting nothing, and creating foods that modern sensibilities might find challenging, but that delivered crucial nutrition. Blood pudding, blodmur, the ultimate waste-nothing food. Nose-to-tail eating is trendy now, but Vikings practiced it out of necessity over a millennium ago with blodmur, blood pudding that transformed what would otherwise be waste from animal slaughter into a nutrient-dense food that could sustain families through lean times. What made blood pudding special was its incredible nutritional density and the Viking principle of using absolutely everything from a slaughtered animal. When a sheep, pig, or cow was butchered, the blood was carefully collected, mixed with barley or oat flour, chopped fat, and sometimes onions or herbs, then stuffed into cleaned intestines and either boiled immediately or smoked for preservation. Modern nutritional science reveals why blood pudding was so valuable to Vikings. Blood contains approximately 18% protein, along with exceptionally high levels of iron, about 30 milligrams per 100 grams, 3.5 ounces, compared to just 2.7 milligrams in the same amount of beef. For people living in northern climates with limited access to fresh vegetables, this iron content helped prevent anemia during long winters. For today's homesteaders who raise their own livestock, blood pudding represents the ultimate in food efficiency and respect for the animal. While modern sensibilities might find the concept challenging, the practice ensures that nothing from a slaughtered animal goes to waste. But while blood pudding appeared only during slaughter times, Vikings needed daily staples that could be made year-round from ingredients always available, foods so simple that even children could prepare them. Porridge, grouter, the daily fuel of Norse life. Instant oatmeal packets are a modern convenience, but they pale in comparison to grouter, the simple porridge that appeared at nearly every Viking meal, providing the steady carbohydrate fuel that powered everything from farming to shipbuilding to exploration. What made grouter special was its role as the foundation of Viking nutrition. Made by boiling barley, oats, or sometimes rye in water or milk until the grains broke down into a thick, creamy consistency, grouter could be eaten plain, mixed with other foods, or used as a base for stews and soups. Archaeological evidence from Viking settlements shows that porridge pots were among the most common cooking vessels. The nutritional value of whole grain porridge explains why Vikings relied on it so heavily. Barley and oats contain complex carbohydrates that release energy slowly over hours. Modern nutritional analysis shows that a bowl of barley porridge provides about 200 calories, 6 grams of protein, and significant amounts of fiber, selenium, and B vitamins. For today's families looking to reduce food costs dramatically, porridge offers unbeatable value. Whole oats or barley cost just pennies per serving and provide genuine nutrition rather than empty calories. A 25-pound, 11.3-kilogram bag of whole oats costs less than many families spend on a single restaurant meal. While porridge provided daily sustenance, Vikings also needed protein sources that could be preserved for months, especially fish that could be stored without the cold climate required for air drying. Soured herring, fermentation's fishy masterpiece. Canning and refrigeration didn't exist in Viking times, yet they discovered something remarkable. Letting herring ferment in its own brine created a preserved fish that could last for months while developing complex flavors and enhanced nutritional properties that fresh fish lacked. What made soured herring special was the fermentation process that transformed a fish that spoiled within days into one that remained edible for half a year or more. Vikings packed fresh herring tightly in wooden barrels with coarse salt and sometimes whey or brine, then sealed the barrels and left them to ferment. The lactic acid bacteria naturally present on the fish multiplied, producing acids that lowered the pH and created conditions where harmful bacteria couldn't survive. Modern research, published in the Journal of Food Science, shows that fermentation increases the bioavailability of nutrients, making proteins easier to digest and actually creating new vitamins, particularly B vitamins and vitamin K2, that weren't present in the fresh fish. The fermentation process also produces beneficial bacteria similar to those in yogurt. For today's adventurous home cooks and fermentation enthusiasts, soured herring represents an advanced preservation technique that requires no special equipment beyond clean containers and salt. Small batch fermentation in glass jars with proper salt ratios can create safely preserved fish that last months in cool storage. But fish alone, even preserved fish, couldn't provide everything Vikings needed. They also required vegetables that could survive storage through 6-month winters when nothing grew. Kale soup, granmetisupa, the green that survived winter. Kale became a modern superfood trend only recently, but Vikings grew this hardy green centuries ago because it was one of the few vegetables that could survive Scandinavian winters, providing crucial vitamins when almost nothing else grew. What made kale soup special was kale's remarkable cold tolerance. While most vegetables died at the first frost, kale actually improved in flavor after freezing, with cold temperatures converting starches to sugars. Vikings could harvest kale from under snow throughout winter, providing fresh greens during months when other vegetables existed only in dried or preserved forms. Modern nutritional science confirms why this simple soup was so valuable. Kale contains exceptional amounts of vitamins A, C, and K. A single cup of cooked kale provides over 1,000% of the daily requirement for vitamin K. Research by the University of Oslo shows that kale retains most of these nutrients even after cooking. For today's gardeners and homesteaders, kale offers the same advantages it gave Vikings: incredible hardiness, continuous harvest potential, and nutrition that rivals expensive supplements. Kale grows in USDA zones 3 through 10, tolerating temperatures down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, minus 12 degrees Celsius, and actually tasting better after frost. While kale soup provided winter vegetables, Vikings needed quick meals during the intense summer work season, when every daylight hour counted for survival. Buttermilk soup, skirsupa, the cold soup that refreshed summer workers. Cold soups are trendy restaurant fare now, but Vikings created skirsupa out of pure necessity, a chilled buttermilk soup that provided refreshing nutrition during the brief but intense Scandinavian summer, when workers needed quick, cooling meals during 18-hour workdays. What made buttermilk soup special was its role as summer fuel. During the short growing season, Viking farmers worked from dawn until late evening. Hot meals required time and fire, both in short supply. Skirsupa solved this problem by requiring no cooking at all. Mix cultured buttermilk or thinned Skyr with cold water. Add chopped fresh herbs like chives, dill, or sorrel, and you had a complete meal ready in minutes. The nutritional profile reveals why it worked so well for hard-working Vikings. The cultured dairy provided protein and probiotics for sustained energy and digestive health, while the fresh herbs added vitamins and minerals. Modern analysis shows that buttermilk contains about 8 grams of protein per cup, along with calcium, phosphorus, and B vitamins. For today's busy families and workers, buttermilk soup offers a forgotten solution to needing quick, nutritious meals. In an era of expensive meal replacement shakes, a simple bowl of cultured dairy with fresh herbs costs pennies and provides genuine nutrition without processing. But while cold soup worked for summer, Vikings needed heartier preparations for the rest of the year, especially ways to transform their preserved fish back into satisfying hot meals. Stockfish, stew, bringing dried fish back to life. Instant soup mixes didn't exist in Viking times, but they had something better. Stockfish stew, a method for transforming rock-hard dried fish back into tender, flavorful meals that could feed families through the darkest winter months. What made stockfish stew special was how it solved the main problem with dried fish. It was nearly inedible without proper preparation. Vikings discovered that soaking this preserved fish in water for 24 to 48 hours, 1 to 2 days, rehydrated it enough to cook, while boiling it with root vegetables, herbs, and perhaps some butter or cream created a satisfying stew. Modern food science research shows that properly rehydrated stockfish retains about 90% of its original protein content and actually has a firmer, meatier texture than fresh fish due to protein structure changes during drying. The long soaking and gentle cooking break down any remaining toughness. For today's preppers and budget-conscious cooks, stockfish stew demonstrates how preserved foods can be transformed into genuinely appealing meals. Dried fish remains available from Scandinavian specialty stores, offering a shelf-stable protein source that lasts years without refrigeration. While stockfish stew used preserved fish, Vikings also needed bread that could sustain them through heavy labor, bread made from the grains that actually grew in their harsh climate. Barley bread, the dark loaf that built Norse civilization. White flour and fluffy loaves are modern preferences, but Vikings thrived on barley bread, dense, dark, and nutritionally superior to the wheat bread that Southern Europeans prized, but that simply wouldn't grow in Scandinavia's short summers. What made barley bread special was both necessity and nutritional advantage. Barley was one of the few grains that could reliably mature during Scandinavia's brief growing season of just 90 to 120 days. Vikings ground barley into flour, using hand-operated querns, mixed it with water, and sometimes a bit of sourdough starter, then baked it into dense loaves. The nutritional profile explains why Vikings who ate it were capable of such remarkable physical feats. Whole grain barley contains about 12% protein, significantly more fiber than wheat, and higher levels of selenium, manganese, and B vitamins. Modern research shows that barley's high fiber content helps regulate blood sugar and provides sustained energy release over hours. For today's health-conscious bakers and those seeking alternatives to modern wheat, barley bread offers proven benefits that Vikings discovered through necessity. Barley flour remains inexpensive and widely available, and baking with it requires no special techniques beyond accepting that the bread will be denser than wheat bread. While barley bread provided carbohydrates, Vikings living near the coast had access to another food source that required no farming at all, one that modern nutritionists are only now rediscovering. Seaweed porridge, the ocean's free superfood. Spirulina supplements and kelp powder capsules are expensive modern products, but Vikings living along Scandinavia's extensive coastlines had the real thing: seaweed that was free, abundant, and packed with minerals that land-based foods couldn't provide. What made seaweed porridge special was its role as a nutritional supplement in a diet that could easily become deficient in certain minerals. Vikings collected several types of edible seaweed, particularly dulse, Palmaria palmata, and various kelp species during low tides. These sea vegetables were either eaten fresh, dried for storage, or cooked into porridge by boiling them with grain. Modern nutritional analysis reveals why seaweed was so valuable to Viking health. Seaweed contains exceptional amounts of iodine, crucial for thyroid function, along with significant calcium, magnesium, iron, and trace minerals. Dulse contains about 8% protein by dry weight and is one of the few plant sources of vitamin B12. For today's coastal dwellers and foragers, seaweed represents free, sustainable nutrition that requires no farming. While regulations vary by location, many areas allow personal seaweed harvesting, dried seaweed stores indefinitely, and can be crumbled into soups and porridges to boost mineral content. While seaweed provided minerals from the sea, Vikings also needed fats that could be preserved for months, providing crucial calories during the lean winter months when fresh food was scarce. Bog butter, nature's underground refrigerator. Butter dishes and refrigerators are modern conveniences Vikings never had, so they developed an unusual preservation method, burying butter in peat bogs where the cool, acidic, oxygen-free environment kept it edible for months or even years. What made bog butter special was the unique chemistry of peat bogs. These wetlands have a pH level around 4.0, similar to vinegar, which inhibits the growth of bacteria that normally spoil dairy products. The lack of oxygen prevents oxidation and rancidity, while the consistent cool temperature, around 40 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit, 4 to 10 degrees Celsius, year-round, keeps the butter in a state of suspended preservation. The archaeological evidence for bog butter is remarkable. Hundreds of ancient butter deposits have been discovered across Ireland, Scotland, and Scandinavia, some dating back over 3,000 years. Modern food scientists have tested thousand-year-old bog butter and found it still technically edible, though it tastes more like aged cheese than fresh butter. For today's homesteaders and those interested in historical food preservation, bog butter demonstrates principles that apply even without access to actual peat bogs. The key factors, cool temperature, acidic environment, and oxygen exclusion, can be replicated using modern methods, while bog butter provided preserved fat. Vikings also needed vegetables that could be stored through winter without any special preservation techniques beyond a cool, dark space. Root vegetable mash, the simple staple that survived winter. Mashed potatoes are a modern comfort food staple, but Vikings had their own version centuries earlier. Root vegetable mash made from turnips, parsnips, and carrots that provided essential nutrients through the long months when nothing grew. What made root vegetable mash special was the remarkable storage life of these hardy vegetables. Unlike leafy greens that spoiled within days, root vegetables could be stored in cool, dark cellars for 6 months or more without significant nutrient loss. Vikings dug storage pits or used naturally cool spaces beneath their homes to keep turnips, parsnips, carrots, and rutabagas fresh from fall harvest through early spring. The nutritional value of these humble roots explains why they were so crucial to Viking survival. Turnips and rutabagas contain significant vitamin C, essential for preventing scurvy during winter months. Parsnips provide complex carbohydrates and fiber, while carrots offer beta-carotene. Modern research shows that root vegetables actually increase in sweetness during cold storage as starches convert to sugars. For today's gardeners and those seeking food security, root vegetables offer the same advantages they gave Vikings: easy to grow, productive in small spaces, and requiring no special equipment for storage. A small root cellar or cool basement can keep root vegetables fresh for months without refrigeration. While root vegetables provided winter nutrition, Vikings also needed liquid nutrition that could be consumed daily, providing both hydration and calories in a form that required no chewing. Fermented milk, surmjölk, the probiotic drink before probiotics, were cool. Kombucha and kefir are trendy health drinks today, but Vikings had surmjölk over 1,000 years ago, naturally fermented milk that provided probiotics, protein, and preservation all in one tangy drink. What made fermented milk special was how it solved multiple problems simultaneously. Fresh milk spoiled within hours in summer, but Vikings discovered that milk left to ferment naturally transformed into a thick, tangy drink that lasted for weeks. This fermentation was essentially automatic. Pour fresh milk into a wooden vessel that had previously held fermented milk. Leave it at room temperature for 12 to 24 hours, and beneficial bacteria would multiply, souring the milk and preserving it. Modern research shows that this fermentation process makes milk easier to digest for people with lactose intolerance, as the bacteria consume much of the lactose. The fermentation also increases B vitamin content and creates beneficial bacteria that support digestive health. For today's health-conscious consumers spending money on expensive probiotic supplements, surmjölk offers a forgotten alternative that costs pennies per serving. You can make it at home using whole milk and a small amount of cultured buttermilk as starter. While fermented milk provided daily nutrition, Vikings also needed protein-rich soups that could be made from dried ingredients stored through winter, creating satisfying meals when fresh food was just a memory. Pea soup, ärtasoppa, the protein-packed winter warrior. Protein powders and supplements are modern inventions, but Vikings had ärtasoppa, dried pea soup that provided plant-based protein through the darkest winter months when meat was scarce and every calorie counted. What made pea soup special was the remarkable nutrition packed into dried peas. Unlike most vegetables that lose nutrients during drying, peas retain nearly all their protein, fiber, and minerals while becoming shelf-stable for years. Vikings grew peas during the short summer, then dried them for winter storage. A pot of pea soup required only dried peas, water, and perhaps some preserved meat for flavor. The nutritional profile reveals why it was so valuable to Viking survival. Dried peas contain approximately 25% protein by weight, more than most meats, along with significant iron, magnesium, and B vitamins. Modern research shows that pea protein is highly digestible and contains all essential amino acids. For today's budget-conscious families and those seeking plant-based protein sources, pea soup offers unbeatable value. Dried, split peas cost just pennies per serving, require no refrigeration, and cook into satisfying meals with minimal ingredients. A single pound of dried peas makes enough soup to feed a family for days. These 16 cheap Viking meals represent more than just historical curiosities. They're proven survival foods that sustained one of history's most successful civilizations through some of the harshest conditions humans have ever faced. From the frozen winters of Iceland to months-long ocean voyages, Vikings thrived because they understood how to create nutritious, long-lasting meals from simple, available ingredients. What's remarkable is how accessible these techniques remain today. No rare ingredients, no expensive equipment, no advanced technology required. Just practical wisdom about fermentation, preservation, and making the most of what's available. In an era of supply chain disruptions, rising food costs, and increasing interest in food security, these Viking meals offer proven solutions that have stood the test of time. Start with 1 or 2 techniques that appeal to you most. Maybe try making Skyr at home, or experiment with drying fish, or simply cook a pot of traditional pea soup. Before long, you'll have access to foods that money can't buy, and nutrition that connects you directly to the survival genius of your Norse ancestors. And if you had a good time rating the past with us today, do us a favor and pillage that like button and subscribe for more journeys into the fascinating and often surprising world of Midgard living.